Unit 4, the first chapter is 26, which is the urinary system. And we did that in the lab. I'm assuming that you guys are familiar with most of these. We finished the urinary system in the lab, which is good, that you can imagine what I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about the urinary system. And when you say urinary system, you're talking about two components. The kidney itself, this is one, and then the urinary tract. So kidney make the urine, urinary tract take it all the way until outside. So the different parts will be discussed, plus how do we actually start the process of filtering out the blood, getting rid of what we don't need, keeping what we need, and the effects of that on the structure of the blood and the body fluids. So again, urinary system is basically kidney and urinary tract. Do not confuse urinary tract from urinary system. Urinary system is everything. Tract is the part that's after the kidney. What does it do? Of course, it's common sense. Kidney filter the blood, get rid of the bad stuff, and keep the good stuff. This is the basics. But there are other functions. So you remove the bad stuff and keep the good stuff, plus, plus. We will talk about that. So urinary system is kidney and tract. Kidney is where we make the urine. Tract is what eliminate the urine. Actually, it's what store and eliminate. We have two ureters that take the urine from the kidney until it go to the bladder. And in the urinary bladder, this is where it's going to be stored temporarily. And then the urethra is the exit. So the ureters take the urine from the kidney. From which part of the kidney specifically? Where does it take the urine from? No, the ureters, not the pyramids. Ureters, where the ureter receive the urine from. What's the structure before that? Renal pelvis. Renal pelvis. Remember the models? Renal minor calyx, major calyx, renal pelvis, ureter. So what's before the ureter? Renal pelvis. Don't forget that. At the end, we will have urination, also known as micturition, and you know the rules, should remember both. And this is where the stored urine is exiting out through the urethra. And you have two sphincters to control that, and we will talk about it. So here it is, two kidneys, two ureters, one bladder, one urethra. And you see here, this is the red here, which is the descending abdominal aorta, from which renal artery originates and go into the kidney, make the whole circulation, and then exit at the renal pelvis. I'm sorry, renal vein that's going to drain into the inferior vena cava. So exit and enter and exit. Where does it enter and exit? And also where the urine exits. What do you call this? What is this area from in which the renal artery enter, the renal vein leave, and the ureter leave? What do we call this area? Hilum, yes, it's the door of the kidney, hilum. Where do you enter and where do you leave? Through the door, which is a hilum. Remember hilum, hilus, porta, hilum, hilus, porta. All of these means door. So where do you exit and where you enter? From the door. What's the door? Hilum. Did you notice something here? Did you notice that the kidneys are not on the same level? Which one is higher and which one is lower? Left is higher and the right is lower. It's not on the same level. Why? The lever is above which one? The right. So it push it down. So the presence of the liver in between the lung above it and the kidney underneath it, it push both of them. The pancreas, yes, the pancreas is behind that. And it's a little bit up. But the point here is In the right side only, we have the liver. The liver pushed the lung up, and if you remember, the right lung is shorter, right? That's why the kidney. The liver. Same liver is pushing the kidney down. Which kidney? Right kidney. So excretion is different than elimination. Excretion is the removal of the waste products. This is called excretion. Elimination is when you discharge it out. Micturate, when you micturate. By doing this, the kidney is filtering the blood. Filtering the blood, meaning the blood go to the kidney, it filter through the kidney, and the kidney will filter it out, meaning it's going to pick and choose, right? This is filtration. Okay, what is this? Waste products. Let it go in the urine. What is this? Glucose. No, don't let it go. We take it back. What is this? Nutrients, vitamins. Anything that's good for us, we take it back. Anything that's bad, let it go. So we will get rid of it. By doing that, you are controlling the blood, aren't you? Like if there is something coming to the kidney, coming to the kidney and goes into the urine. Where did it come from? From the blood, right? So are you controlling the structure of the blood? Yes. When you get rid of sodium in the urine, where did you get the sodium? From the blood. So you're changing the composition of the blood, right? If you keep potassium, for example, keep it where? In the blood. So you are controlling the structure of the blood or the composition of the blood. Water, you get rid of the water in the urine. Where did you get that water from? Isn't it from the blood? So you're controlling the structure or the concentration of everything in the blood, which we call it the homeostatic function of the kidney. Homeostasis. Remember homeostasis in the very, very beginning, keeping everything within the normal function and range. So this is the homeostatic function. You keep everything in the blood within the normal range. What do you mean? I mean, if the potassium is going up in the kidney, in the blood, kidney will get rid of it. Homeostasis. You bring it back to normal, right? If you don't have enough sodium, you take it back. So it goes up. So you're controlling the concentration and the volume of the blood. By doing that, you're controlling, beside the composition, you're controlling also the volume and the pressure of the blood. So we're controlling three things now, right? Composition, volume, pressure. Composition, volume, pressure, right? Composition, this goes out in the urine, this doesn't go out. That is controlling the composition of the blood. Make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, this is one, controlling the composition. Controlling the volume. How? You can urinate a liter, you can urinate half a liter, right? A quarter of a liter, 2 liters, 3 liters. So by doing this, you can keep water or get rid of water, and water is the main component of the blood. So now you're controlling the volume, right? If the blood volume is 5 liters, which is average, right? And if it's getting 5.5, you get rid of half. You're controlling the volume. How? Water. You're also controlling the pressure. How? Mainly also through the water. Do you remember in the cardiovascular system when we said blood volume goes up, blood pressure goes up? Do you remember this? So you're controlling the blood pressure. This is not the only thing, but this is one of them. You also control the pressure of the blood through, or the blood pressure, through the different ions. More sodium chloride, less sodium chloride. So we're controlling basically three things. The other homeostatic function, we're talking about the blood still. We're talking about the effect of the kidney on the blood. What does the kidney do to the blood? And we talked about three things so far. So follow with me. Composition, volume, and blood pressure. What else? We also control the red blood cells itself, because erythropoietin is a hormone that's secreted from the kidney. It go to the bone marrow, stimulating the bone marrow to make red blood cells. So now we also controlling the red blood cells itself through erythropoietin. There is another hormone which is called renin, and this we will talk about it. We have a lot of details, and we talked about it before. If you guys are following with me, I told you you are not going away from renin. Renin angiotensin system, you will see it all the time. You will see it in this chapter, and you'll see it in the next chapter as well. Renin, important. Renin, angiotensin system. Renin angiotensin system. So you should remember these two, very important, erythropoietin and renin. There is another thing that is activated in the kidney. What is it? A vitamin. It's related to calcium. Which vitamin do we activate in the kidney? Not calcitonin. You're close. Vitamin D. Yeah, vitamin D. Don't we make vitamin D in the skin and we activate it in the kidney? So this is another function of the kidney. Ion concentration. Yes, this is part of the composition. When everything go to the kidney pick and choose, including the ions. What should I do with the sodium? What should I do with the calcium? What should I do with potassium and so on? It all depends on the blood composition, on the concentration in the blood. The kidney know somehow, and I will explain it. But the kidney know calcium is going up, kidney will get rid of some. Calcium is going down, kidney will keep some. Sodium, potassium, ions in general. And here is a calcitriol. Calcitriol is active vitamin D. The inactive form is cholecalciferol. Not important. This is the important one. Calcitriol, active vitamin D. So secretions are important. Erythropoietin, renin, and calcitriol. Don't forget this. Erythropoietin, renin, calcitriol. And understand what each one of those is doing. The other thing is pH. What's responsible for pH? This is basics, 233, but let me refresh your information. Do you remember the pH from 0 to 14? What's the normal pH of the blood? 7.35, 7.45. And what are the two that are controlling this? Hydrogen and OH, isn't it? Hydrogen and OH. Isn't it hydrogen is an ion and OH? These are ions, right? So if the kidney gets rid of hydrogen, this will lead to higher pH. Make sense? You get rid of hydrogen. Hydrogen is acidity. You get rid of it. Or you keep it. That will cause acidity. You get rid of OH or you keep it. Aren't you controlling the two components? I always say the pH is like gray color. How to make gray? I put white and black and mix it. If it is 50-50, it will be like exactly perfect gray, right? I have the two components. I can add some white, I can add some black. So now you're controlling the gray color. It can be light, it can be dark, right? Same thing. You're controlling H and OH. And you can say which one goes more. That could shift you toward acidity or alkalinity. So that's controlling the pH. Any nutrients, let me say it this way, 100%, 100%. Under normal circumstances, you should save and keep 100% of the nutrients that go to the kidney. This is normal. If you don't keep 100%, there is something wrong. This is what you're supposed to do. This is a normal. Any nutrients, whatever it is, you should take it back. Unless you have too much of it. Like if you're diabetic, for example. This is not normal, right? Diabetes is not normal. If you have hypercalcemia, that's not normal. If everything is normal, you take 100% back. Otherwise, it depends on the situation. Because, yes, because they have too much glucose. So the kidney will get rid of the glucose, of the extra glucose, osmosis, a lot of water follow. So they go to the bathroom a lot. Yes. Also helping the liver. The liver, if we did the liver in the gastroenterology or the digestive system, it was detoxifying poisoning or poisons. So here we also detoxify the toxins. We get rid of it in the liver, but not 100%. Some of it stay and go to the kidney. The kidney will get rid of it. So the kidney is retroperitoneal, and we know that the right side is lower than the left side, right? It's retroperitoneal. What's retro? Yes, behind or posterior to. Retroperitoneal. And here is what I was just saying. This is the right one is lower than the left one. If you look at the kidney itself, the outermost layer, do you remember the kidney, the brown, the outermost brown of the kidney? This is called the fibrous capsule. The fibrous capsule. In the body, if I ask you what's the outermost layer of the kidney, it's the fibrous capsule. All right? But in our body, surrounding it, it doesn't count as a layer. It does not. But surrounding it, we have two extra layers. One of them is fat, and the other one is fascia. Fascia means connective tissue. Why are we doing this? Because the kidney is delicate structure. Every single delicate structure in our body is surrounded by fat. Do we know that? Do you know that you have fat around your eyes? You have fat around your heart, around your pancreas, around your kidneys? Yes, every single important structure is surrounded by fat or alternative, but most of it is fat. So here we have fat to act as a cushion. So if you move or if you hit something or whatever happened, the kidney will not be easily injured because the fat around it, which is called perinephric. What's peri? Around. The fat around the kidney should act as a cushion, and then there is another layer outside of the fat that's called the renal fascia, which is fibrous tissue to keep everything in place. Is everything making sense so far? There is a function for everything. Remember, I told you from the beginning, physiology is understanding. It's all functions. Do we have fat? Yes. Is there anything in the body that doesn't have a function? No. Everything have a function. Why do we have fat around the kidney? Cushion. Act as a cushion. Why do you have fibrous tissue? To fix it in place, to anchor it. So if you look at this picture here, this is the kidney itself. Look at this brown here. This is the brown, the fibrous capsule. Outside of it, do you see yellow and then another layer? The yellow is the perinephric fat, and the outer one is renal fascia. Um, the entrance or the door of the kidney is called hilum. And you remember that it's a very common question, and I told you about it several times. We tend to ask you what enter and what leave to see if you understand or not. Hilum is a door. Door means in and out, enter and exit. What enter and what exit? Renal artery and renal vein enter. I'm sorry, I mean renal nerves. Renal artery and renal nerves enter. What leave? Renal vein and ureter. Very important. You have to know exactly what enter and what leave. So if you look at this picture here, you see the renal artery entering, nerves are entering, vein and ureter right here. Both of those are exiting. You will see the term renal sinus. Renal sinus, I talked about it in the lab, and I told you it's all these cavities. So this is not a good answer in the lab unless we point out specifically and explaining or giving you a clue to say renal sinus. Like if I show you the renal pelvis, yeah, it's part of the renal sinus. You don't say renal sinus because renal sinus is all of this together. This is never a good answer. Okay, renal pelvis is renal pelvis. Renal fat is renal fat. Major calyces is major calyces. Yes, I understand that all of those combined is called the renal sinus, which is the whole cavity. But if I want to ask you about this, I would say, what do you call these cavities together? Or I can put multiple, you can see in the exam, multiple stickers asking you what are these together. So there has to be a reason for you to answer renal sinus. Otherwise, Do not answer renal sinus because it is all of these cavities combined. So I mentioned that the outermost layer is the fibrous capsule, right? The other two does not count as a layer. It is surrounding. It's not a layer. Like if you remember the heart, the outermost epicardium, right? There is a sac outside of it. Does it count toward the layers of the heart? No. The layers are endo, myo, and epicardium. Do you remember this? These are the actual layers. Surrounding it, other things, yes, but it's not part of it. So here is a renal fascia, the fibrous capsule. The fibrous capsule, I mean. The fibrous capsule, the brown inside of it, do you remember that pink that was more superficial? This is the renal cortex. So renal cortex is a superficial portion of the kidney. And then inside of it, we have the renal medulla. The renal medulla consists of pyramids and columns. Do you remember that? Okay. And I told you, if I ask about renal pyramids, you say renal pyramids. Don't say medulla. Unless there is a specific question asking you what are these combined. So cortex, medulla, and the medulla is pyramids alternating with columns. Here are the columns. The columns are basically extensions from the cortex. Are we following? The cortex that's outside send extensions in between the pyramids, but it counts toward the medulla. Lobe is something unique, and I showed you that in the lab. Remember that wedge shaped? I told you, like, if you cut, like, you get one of these watermelon and you get like a wedge shaped part of the watermelon, right? This wedge shaped will include the outside and the inside, both. So it is, you're taking a section like this of the kidney. This is called lobe, including cortex, one pyramid, and a little bit of the columns on either side. You call all of this together lobe. And the lobe is where we produce the urine, and we will talk about the details. So where do we make the urine? In the pyramid, and in the kidney loop, which within the structures around it. So it is in the loop. This is where we make the urine. And then what? The urine will go to the first part of the cavity. What is it? What's the first part that the urine go to? Major or minor? Which one is first? Minor first. And the minors merge together to make major. And the majors merge together to make renal pelvis, followed by ureter, bladder, urethra, right? So here we have, once you make the urine, it leave through the ducts in the renal papilla. Do you remember the renal papilla? What's the renal papilla? Tip of the pyramids, the tips of the pyramids. So this is where the urine leaves, tip of the pyramids. It's called renal papilla. It go to what? Minor calyx, major calyx, renal pelvis, ureter, and so on. So what's the minor calyx and major calyx? The big cup and the small cup. It looks like a cup shaped. So minor calyx first, and then minor calyx merge together to make major calyx. It's about 4 or 5. And those 4 or 5 come together to make the renal pelvis. It's a funnel-shaped chamber that in which the urine is going to connect. And it is the major part of the renal sinus. So let's look at this picture right here. Here is, do you remember this model looks like this? What is this outside here? The fibrous capsule, and this pink cortex, and all of this. Medulla. And what is this in the medulla? Pyramid, and this column. You see that the column have the same color of the cortex? It's an extension from the cortex. And where do we make the urine? Look at this. I'm going to cut like this, and like this. You see all of this together? We have a model like this. That pyramid, the overlying part of the cortex, and a little bit from the columns on either side. All of this together is called lobe. In the lobe, we make the urine, and I will talk about the details. But look at this. What is this? Renal papilla, right? The tip of the pyramid is renal papilla. And you see these minor calyx, they come together, major calyx, minor calyx, minor calyx, minor calyx, major calyx, major calyx. All of them come together, renal pelvis, and then to the ureter. Here is how it looks like in reality. This is a cadaver picture. It's the same thing, just to, if you're interested to know how it actually looks like. Blood supply is one of the important things that we should know. The kidney receive 20 to 25% of the total cardiac output. That cardiac output that goes out, go to the aorta, goes down, go to the renal arteries, both of them, what goes is about 20 to 25% of the cardiac output, which is about 1.2 liters. You should remember these numbers. Okay, 20 to 25% of the cardiac output go to the kidney. Not all the blood go to the kidney. No, ultimately it will, right? 25, and then another 25, 25, 25. Yes, the whole entire blood will end up going, but it goes in patches like this. 20 to 25%, which is about 1.2 liters or 1200 milliliters, which enter through the renal artery, obviously. After the renal artery, we have the segmental, and we saw that in models. Segmental is in between segments. Segments mean like if the whole kidney is like 2 or 3 segments, it's segmental, the first one. The sequence here is very, very important. Starting from descending abdominal aorta, going to the renal artery, to the segmental, to the interlobar, and we know interlobar means in between the loops, right? And we know what's a loop now. And then it's going to radiate in the columns, making the arcuate arteries. I would show you the picture, and I'm assuming that you remember. After the arcuate, we have the cortical radiate. From the cortical radiate, we have afferent arterioles. What's afferent? Is it entering or leaving? Entering. How do you remember it? Axis, axis and exit, right? Afferent with A, axis with A. Efferent with E, exit. Okay? So afferent arteriole, well, what is it entering? To what? It takes the blood to what? What is it entering? And the other one, efferent, it's exiting. Yes, entering and exiting what? Not the kidneys. Not the pyramids. The renal corpuscle. The renal corpuscle. Do you remember that renal corpuscle capsule? And inside of it, these glomerulus, the capillaries. The glomerulus are these, the capillaries that are getting the blood from the afferent. Okay, so what's the efferent? Take the blood to renal corpuscle. Which part specifically? Glomerulus. So afferent branches into glomerulus, which is the capillaries. And then the efferent will leave from the glomerulus. I will show you the pictures. After that, what the afferent brings the blood to the corpuscle, and the corpuscle is part of what? If you guys are following, renal corpuscle is part of what? Nephron. The corpuscle plus the tubules, nephron, and the nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. You have to remember this. Nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. What's a nephron? Corpuscle plus tubules. What's a corpuscle? Capsule, glomerulus, and the space in between, including afferent and efferent. So what's after that? After the efferent, we have the cortical radiate, and then the opposite of what we mentioned. If you memorize the arteries, and you have to memorize it, you will see question, lecture, and lab. So you have to memorize it in that sequence. Okay? If you memorize or if you remember the arteries, the veins have the same name. Okay? It's just like the end here. This is afferent. Go to the glomerulus and then the efferent. Anything after that is the same. So you will have cortical radiate and arcuate and then interlobar, but just the opposite. Interlobar, segmental until you go to the renal vein. It's everything but upside down. Here it is. Look at it again. Renal artery, segmental. Here we have two segments, like half and half. What's after the segmental? It runs in between these lobes. So we call it lobar, and then arcuate, and then the cortical radiate right here. After the cortical radiate, it's not shown here, but it go afferent, glomerulus, and efferent. And now look at this, cortical radiate again. And then arcuate, interlobar vein, segmental vein, renal vein. What's after the renal vein? Inferior vena cava. Yes. So here it is a little bit more, just focusing inside. So what is this? Interlobar artery, interlobar vein, right? Everything is the same name. So you don't memorize it twice. It's the same thing. And this is arcuate, artery and vein, isn't it? So for arcuate artery, it gives you the cortical radiate, right? Cortical radiate, then afferent, go to this spherical structure. What is this spherical structure? The corpuscle. Look at this, corpuscle. And what's after that? Efferent. And the opposite. Cortical radiate, arcuate, and so on. But look at this one specifically. Look at this one. So you see the afferent going to the renal corpuscle, specifically the glomerulus. Are we following? Specifically the glomerulus. What's the glomerulus? It's a group of capillaries inside the corpuscle, isn't it? Capillaries. It's a tuft of capillaries, a group of capillaries, a bunch of capillaries. It's capillaries in between the afferent and efferent. And the glomerulus is part of corpuscle, and the corpuscle is part of nephron. Follow with me. Okay, so here it is. This is the glomerulus, and look at this surrounding it. This is the capsule. So together, this red and purple together, this is the corpuscle. What is this? This purple. These are the tubules. So what do you call this corpuscle, which is red and purple? This part right here, plus these tubules. Nephron. And what's a nephron? Functional layer of the kidney. Okay. I want you to notice the difference between this one and this one. Do you see it different? This is almost entirely in the cortex, right? She's just a little tiny piece go to the pyramid. We call that cortical nephron. Compared to this is closer to the pyramid, isn't it? And look at all these tubules. See how it's longer and extending all the way deep into the pyramids? So we call those juxtamedullary. What's juxta? Does anybody know what's juxta? A Greek for neighbor or beside. So these are the juxtamedullary nephrons because it is neighbor, beside, adjacent, same thing, to the medulla. And it extends all the way down within the pyramid. So we have those two types. It's not just one type of nephron. It's two types. Cortical is one. Juxtamedullary is another one. Here is the exact sequence. You should memorize this. at least you will see one or more lecture, one more lab. You will see it, I'm telling you. It's extremely important. How about the nerves? It's nothing much. Remember, sympathetic and parasympathetic, they adjust the rates of making urine and it adjusts the composition of the urine as well. How does it adjust the composition of the urine? Because sympathetic wanted to increase or decrease the blood pressure. Increase the blood pressure. And what's serotonin do? Does it increase or decrease the blood pressure? Increase. So sympathetic go to the renin, secreting renin, increasing blood pressure. Okay, and we will talk about the details. We talked about it before, but we'll talk about it again. So here is the nephron. This is like the units. If you go to any factory, you will see multiple units, 100 units, right? Each one of those is the same. And all of them are doing the same function, right? So we have a lot of these nephrons, and the nephron is renal corpuscle plus what? Tubules. And the corpuscle consists of glomerulus plus capsule. Capsule. What do we call the capsule? Glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule? Glomerular or Bowman's capsule? Huh? Do you remember how the nephron looks like, the corpuscle? Do you remember this? Capillaries surrounded by a capsule. These capillaries are glomerulus, and this capsule is called glomerular capsule because it's surrounding the glomerulus, and it's also called Bowman's capsule. And we know that we should remember both of them. So what is all of this? This is nephron, right? Two parts. Here is one part, and all of these are the other part. What is this part? Corpuscle. What is the red? Glomerulus. What's the surrounding it? Capsule. And then you have the tubules. The tubules are as follow. This first part here, look at it. You will notice two things. Number one, it's coming directly from the capsule, isn't it? Anything in the capsule drain to this part. And the other thing is, look how folding it is. Can we see that? The folding. So because of that, folding means convoluted. This is Latin or Greek, convoluted. Do you see this one is convoluted as well? Isn't this one is folding too? So this is convoluted and this is convoluted. The rest is not. The rest is just straight, isn't it? So this is convoluted and this is convoluted. What's the difference? This is convoluted, but it's proximal to the capsule. So we call it proximal convoluted tubules. And this one is also convoluted, but it's distal because it is far away. So the one that's continuation of the capsule, is that proximal, distal? Proximal. And the one that's far away, distal convoluted tubule. And what's in between? In between, there is a loop here. You see this loop? This is called the nephron loop or loop of Henle. Loop of Henle. Okay? Or the nephron loop. There are two names for it, nephron loop and loop of Henle. Look at this. Look at the arrow. This side, you see the arrow going down? So this is descending part and ascending part, right? Proximal, descending, ascending, distal. So proximal itself is thick, followed by thin part, and then thin, followed by thick part. Did we notice this? Okay, so this is all together is the structure of the nephron, including the details of the tubules. So here it is. There is a glomerulus surrounded by glomerular capsule, and there is a space in between. Okay? There is a space in between. And glomerulus is a tuft, a group, a bunch of capillaries that get the blood from what? Afferent or efferent? Afferent. So blood is coming from the afferent. It go to these capillaries, right? Are we following? Blood go, of course, there is blood pressure there. It goes in the afferent, entering into these capillaries. Because of that pressure, the blood will be pushed out of the capillaries. The whole blood? No. Remember when we talked about the capillaries before? What can leave the capillaries? Anything that is small enough. Do you remember this? So is everything leave in the glomerulus? Of course not. Anything that is small enough. What is small enough? No, let's do it the opposite better. Not what is small enough because most of it is small enough. What is not small enough? What is large? Plasma proteins and cells. That's it. Anything else can go out. Are we following? So what leave the blood and filter out of the capillaries? Everything except cells and plasma proteins. Too big to leave. Okay? You cannot get, if you have a truck in here, you cannot get it through the door, right? Anything else can go, but not something that's bigger than the capillaries. So what's bigger than the capillaries? Cells and proteins. Everything else, it's a lot, but everything else is filtered out. It leave the capillaries. Where does it go when it leaves the capillaries? To the space first, capsular space, right? Glomerulus surrounded by capsule, and in between there is a space. So when it leaves the capillaries, it go to the space, and then go to what? What's after the space? Proximal, convoluted tubules, descending loop, ascending loop, distal convoluted tubule. This is how it's going to go. Okay? So the question is, when you said everything that's small enough, which is basically most of the blood. So is that going to be urine? No. As it is passing through this pathway that I talked about, proximal convoluted tubule, descending loop, ascending limb, and then distal convoluted tubule. As it is going through all of this, you're going to filter everything you want. Pick and choose. Where do we pick and choose? The glomerulus doesn't do anything. Glomerulus is just a filter. Everything small, leave through the glomerulus, through these capillaries. That's it. It doesn't do anything else. Where are we going to pick and choose? Tubules. So as you're passing through all of these tubules, take this back, get rid of this. Take this back, get rid of this. Until you go to the end, which is the papilla. At this point, you're done. No more exchange. And this is actually urine. So what leave the glomerulus is called filtrate, which is the vast majority of the blood, the main portion of the blood. We call it filtrate. Do you call it urine? It's not urine yet. It's filtrate. Filtrate contain good and bad stuff. Okay? As you're moving down these tubules toward the end, you are going to take what you want back, the good stuff back, get rid of the bad stuff, and you continue to do that as you move on all of these tubular system. Take the good back, get rid of the bad. Take the good back, get rid of the bad. Doing the same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing, until you go to the end, you're done. Now you call it the urine, which is what enter the minor calyx, right? What enter the minor calyx is actually urine. You can't change anything else. From the minor calyx down, all the way down, no choice, and you don't have any say. It's the same urine moving, just moving. So we call that part, which is the tract, the urinary tract is just conducting system because it doesn't do anything. You just take it from the minor calyx until you urinates out of the urethra. No change. So glomerular capsule itself is two layers. There is an inner layer and outer layer. The capsule is two layers. Visceral is the inner one, and there is an outer layer, and in between is called capsular space. There is something called podocytes, and these podocytes are the one that's going to make the filtration slits. Podocytes, something looks like the foot, like projections like these, and together they are making slits through which things are going to leave. Look at this. And we have a model that looks exactly like this. What is this? Afferent. And what is this? Glomerulus. And this? Efferent. Did you notice something here? Did you notice that the capillaries are covered by something white? Right? The podocytes and the visceral layer is covering this. And this is the outer layer. So there are two layers here. One of them is adherent to the glomerulus. So if you see a model that's that these glomerulus or these capillaries are red, it's not covered. But if you see it white, it's covered by the inner layer of the capsule. So the capsule is inner layer adherent to the capillaries or to the glomerulus, an outer layer, and what do you call it in between? Capsular space. What go to the capsular space? Filtrate. And the filtrate go to the proximal and then follow all the way down. Something here that's worth mentioning. Look at this. This is the proximal convoluted tubule, right? This is just the beginning, isn't it? Okay, what's after the proximal? Descending and then ascending and then it's something weird happen here that the distal go close to those two arterioles. They just notice it. Okay, we're saying distal, so it's far away, right? Not far away in position, it's far away in the sequence. Like urine go to proximal, descending, ascending, distal. Distal, the name doesn't come from because it's very far away. No, it's far away from the functional point of view because the urine go to it at the end. But in practical life, these distal convoluted tubule goes like this. Proximal, loop, distal, somehow the distal goes beside this, beside these two arterioles for a reason. What is that reason? Forming the most important structure in this, which is called juxtaglomerular apparatus. Very important, this apparatus. What do we secrete in the kidney? The very important hormone that increases the blood pressure. Renin. Where do you secrete it? From here. Juxtaglomerular apparatus. So this apparatus is the endocrine function of the kidney. Very important. Juxtaglomerular apparatus. It's the apparatus that is the endocrine system of the kidney. This is what secretes renin. All right? This is two parts. You see this? This belongs to what? These thick cells belong to what? Afferent. Yes, this is part. And these cells belong to distal. Yes, these are the two components of the juxtaglomerular apparatus. This part, these modified cells of the distal, are called macula densa, and this part is called the juxtaglomerular cells, which is part of the afferent, plus the extraglomerular marginal cells. But the most important two are those two. Okay, juxtaglomerular cells and macula densa. Are we following? Macula densa are modified cells of the distal. Okay, juxtaglomerular cells are modified cells of afferent. Is that clear? The two components of the apparatus. One of them have the same name, juxtaglomerular apparatus. Part of it is juxtaglomerular cells. So do not confuse apparatus with cells. Cells are part of it. And the other part is macula densa, which are modified cells of the distal convoluted tubule. Those two together are the two parts are juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is the endocrine function or the endocrine part of the kidney. So when you filtrate, you need to go through what? Like here's the blood coming from the afferent, going to the capillaries, which is glomerulus. And then it will leave the capillaries, right? Going to what? Before the proximal, the space, the capsular space. In order to leave these capillaries and go to the space, you have to pass through the capillary membrane plus the visceral layer of the renal capsule. You have to go through both of them. So these spaces that you will go through are not big enough for plasma proteins and cells, as I mentioned before. Renal tubules, proximal convoluted tubule, followed by nephron loop. Look at the other name I was talking about. Nephron loop, loop of Henle. Which one am I going to ask you about? Anyone. You will see anyone, and you know that. It's U-shaped, going down first, which is descending. So it's proximal, descending, ascending, distal. Here it is again, corpuscle, glomerulus plus capsule, space in between. What is this? What's the green here? Referring to what? Yeah? Filtrate, yes, filtrate. The green here is the filtrate, not the urine, filtrate. Going to the proximal convoluted tubule, descending loop of Fennel, ascending loop of Fennel, distal convoluted tubule. This is like making it flat, but in reality, this distal convoluted tubule somehow go close to this juxtaglomerular apparatus. And so the last part so far is the distal convoluted tubule. And as the filtrate going through these tubules, you are going to take things back. The good, you'll take it back, and the bad, you will take it out. There is a name for this. To take it back, the good stuff, like if you see in the tubules, you see glucose. Are you going to let it go to the urine? Glucose is our nutrients. We will take it back. It's good, right? Vitamins, amino acids, anything that's good. You're not going to leave it, right? You will take it back. Take it back is called reabsorption. Okay? At the same time, if there is still bad stuff in the blood, you're going to pour it into the tubules, get rid of it. And we call that secretion. So, what are the two components? Reabsorption and secretion. Reabsorb good, secrete, and you have to remember these terms. Reabsorb the good, secrete the bad. Reabsorb good, secrete bad. As you're moving along the tubules, you continue to do that until the end of the tubules. So the components are reabsorption and secretion. Here is the proximal convoluted tubule. And the most important thing that I want you to remember here is reabsorption of ions, certain ions, and you do have to remember it. The kidney is not an easy chapter. There are some details that you need to know. So I want you to know exactly, like I'm saying, generally speaking, reabsorption and secretion, right? Reabsorption of what? And secretion of what? The good stuff and the bad stuff. No, that's not enough details. It's proximal, is different than the loop, is different than the distal. Each one of those is reabsorbing and secreting something different. Okay, it's ions, it's nutrients, and so on. We will talk about the details. Then you have the descending limb, followed by the ascending limb, followed by the distal convoluted tubule, and the loop is thick and thin part. Here is the distal convoluted tubule, and this is where we're going to reabsorb water. And there are details and some ions. And here is the juxtaglomerular apparatus or complex, and it is mainly macula densa juxtaglomerular cells plus extraglomerular mesangial cells. 3 parts. Here's macula densa. It's part of the distal. Juxtaglomerular cells, part of the afferent. And extraglomerular mesangial cells, these are in between, the afferent and efferent. Here it is again. We talked about it already. Here is one, macula densa, part of the distal. Here is the second one, juxtaglomerular cells. It's part of the afferent. And here is in between, which is extraglomerular mesangial cells. After all of that, there is a collecting system, collecting duct. What's a collecting duct? Are we following so far that we have proximal, descending, ascending, distal? After the distal, there is a duct called collecting duct. And this is the last part. Collecting duct. Proximal, descending loop, ascending loop, distal, collecting duct. And the collecting duct is the last part. Listen to this. The tip of the collecting duct go to the renal papilla. And the renal papilla is urine go to what? Minor calyx. So what? Remember when I told you the renal papilla is projecting into the minor calyx, and the urine go to the minor calyx from renal papilla. What do you mean the renal papilla? Like the tip of the pyramid itself? Not the tip of the pyramid. The collecting duct is at the tip of the pyramid, the last part of it. Okay. So collecting system also have a function, and it is your final adjustment. So you're going through proximal. It's going to do adjustment. What do you mean adjustment? Secretion and reabsorption. And then you go through the loop, same thing. And then distal, same thing. Collecting is your last part. This is your last word. This is your last action. Okay, after that, you have no say. You can't do anything. So this is your last station, which is a collecting system that's going to adjust the composition. Here is a collecting duct. You see this? You see this is entering here, and here is one, and here is one, and here is one. Do you know what are these? What is this, and this, and this, and this? Distal convoluted tubules. Distal convoluted go to the collecting, another distal convoluted go to the collecting. So the collecting duct is collecting from multiple distal convoluted tubules. Is that clear? So it's not one collecting duct for each one nephron. No. Distal convoluted tubule go to the collecting duct. Another distal convoluted tubule go to the same collecting duct. So it receives from more than one. Remember the two types of nephrons? What are the two types of nephrons? Cortical and juxtamedullary. Juxtamedullary. Juxta means neighbor, beside. Juxtamedullary, beside the medulla or the medulla. Okay? Which one is more? 85% are cortical, and only 15% are juxtamedullary. You should remember this. The vast majority are the cortical ones. There is only 15% juxtamedullary. Now the question is, listen, as you're moving down all of these tubules, you are going to reabsorb the good stuff and secrete the bad stuff. Are we following? So when you say reabsorbing, you mean you take it from the tubule to the blood, right? Right? Reabsorb it, take it from the tubules to the blood. Which blood? The blood is called peritubular capillaries. So surrounding, this is something that we didn't talk about before. Remember these renal artery, segmental, loop, and all of this? We didn't talk about this. This is an additional part. So this is basically to help the tubules to do their function. Like you're going to reabsorb. Reabsorb to what? We have to give you some blood capillaries to reabsorb to. And when I say secrete, meaning you take something from the blood and you secrete it out in the tubules, right? What do you mean take it from the blood? From which blood? From the blood, from the capillaries surrounding the tubules. Hence the name peri. And we know peri, right? Peri means around. So peritubular capillaries around the tubules. Is that the same thing for these nephrons? No, it's different. Remember the juxtamedullary cells have long, very long tubules. Do you remember this? It goes all the way down in the pyramids. Do you remember it? Right? Because of that, you cannot do peritubular capillaries. No, it has to be long enough. And this is called vasa recta. It's called vasa recta. So when you reabsorb from the cortical nephron, you send it to the peritubular capillaries. When you reabsorb from these juxtamedullary, you send it to the vasa recta. Are we following? It's doing the same function, but it just looks different. In both cases, these are just capillaries surrounding the tubules, so that you reabsorb to it and you secrete from it. So it's doing the same function. It just looks different. So look at this. Peritubular capillaries will be like surrounding these tubules. But look at this, how long it is. So the capillaries here should go like this. Long, straight. Long, straight is vasa recta. Recta means straight like this, not like the peritubular. You see this? You see this surrounding the tubules? These are the peritubular capillaries. Compare it to this. Did you get the difference? Peritubular capillaries, and these are the vasa recta. Okay, so now what are you going to get rid of in the urine? You know that the urine is mainly water. We all know that, right? It's water. And other things dissolved in the water. What are the other things? Bad stuff and extras. Extras. Extras doesn't mean bad, right? Bad is bad. Waste products. But extras is not necessarily bad, right? If you have extra potassium, does that mean that the potassium is bad? No, it's just extra, right? You have extra hydrogen, get rid of it. Is the hydrogen bad? You don't say it's good or bad. It's just extra, right? So you get rid of two things: bad stuff, which is the waste products, and extras. Anything that's more than normal. What is the bad stuff? The metabolic waste products that you should remember. Metabolic waste products. What are the metabolic waste products? Urea, uric acid, and creatinine. Urea, uric acid, creatinine. These are called metabolic waste products. Can I say waste products? No. Metabolic waste products. Why? Because it comes from metabolism. It's not ions. It comes from metabolism. Like urea is the most abundant. It comes from breaking down the proteins. Creatinine come from the breakdown of creatine phosphate. Uric acid come from nitrogenous bases. Do you remember the nitrogenous bases of DNA and RNA, right? So these are the different types of food that you're going to break down. When you break down glucose, you don't make like waste products. What kind of waste products? Do you remember when we break down glucose, you end up like having carbon dioxide and water, right? Where is the waste product here that go to the kidney? Nothing, right? But the other three, there is an actual waste product that you need to actively get rid of it. And it's called organic waste products. Urea come from proteins, but it's not urea. It was something before that. What is that something? Ammonia. Yes. So when you break down proteins, you make ammonia. And the liver convert ammonia into uric acid. Why? It's less toxic or less poisonous, right? Less toxic. Ammonia is toxic. It's actually toxic to the brain. It can destroy the brain if it is too high. Okay. So at the end, you break down proteins, you break down carbohydrates. This is put it to the side because there is no waste products. It's carbon dioxide and you breathe it out. So put this to the side. Have nothing to do with the kidney. Okay. Proteins, urea. Creatinine phosphate, creatinine. Nitrogenous bases will give you uric acid. You know what's the richest sort of nitrogenous bases? Does anybody know? Red meat. It's meat in general, but red meat specifically. So what happened when you why they tell you don't eat a lot of red meat? What's the condition? Does anybody know? There is a condition. If you eat too much red meat, you get like your foot and your joints have an issue. Anybody? Gout? Do you remember gout? Gout. Uric acid. Gout is extra uric acid, extra enough that the kidney is not sufficient to get rid of it. So guess what? It end up going to the joints, destroying the joints. We call it gout. Okay, so far organic waste products. And the urine that leave the kidney is concentrated. Why is it concentrated? You don't have to remember the number exactly, but it is concentrated. Not like the plasma. It's more concentrated. Why? Here it is. Blood go to the nephron through the afferent, isn't it? Okay. Go to the capillaries or glomerulus. Most of it will be filtered out. It's everything minus plasma proteins and cells. Following? So what is going to the capsular space? The filtrate, which is most of the blood, isn't it? Are we following so far? Okay. This filtrate go to the tubules. You're going to get back the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff. Following so far? The good stuff includes water. Include water. Guess what? If you go to the bathroom and you make a liter of urine or a liter and a half, if the kidney is not working, you will end up making like a barrel of water per day. Because all this blood, 25% of the 5 liters go to the kidney, and then another 25, all of this blood go to the kidney. If this goes out as it is, you're making a barrel of urine. Do we make a barrel of urine? No. We make a liter and a half, 2 liters maybe. This is like the maximum. So where is all of this water that within the blood that was filtered out? We take it back. Okay? So that's why we say the urine is a lot more concentrated than the plasma. Because as you're moving down, you don't leave it as it is. You take 90 something percent of the water. You end up leaving part of the water enough to carry the stuff to urinate, just to help you urinate. How can you urinate? It has to be fluid, right? So you just leave a little bit, like 1%, 2% of the water, just leave it to take the waste products and micturate it out or urinate it out. But 90 something percent, like 98%, you take it back, reabsorb. Okay? So the three processes together are filtration. What's the filtration? Most of the blood leave what? Are we still following? It leave what? Filtered out what? From what? Glomerulus and go to the capsule, right? This is filtrate. Are you moving down? Reabsorb and secrete. Are we following? Reabsorb and secrete. So look at this here. You need to know what exactly reabsorbed and what exactly is secreted from each one of those. This slide specifically, 59, is very, very important. I'm telling you. Slide 59, this picture, very, very, very important. Multiple questions from this. So, what exactly do we do in each one of those? Here in this one, you reabsorb water and ions from this. Okay? If you look at the color code here, the blue, it's water. This beige, these are the ions. What ions? Potassium specifically. I'm sorry, sodium. Sodium. You reabsorb sodium. And you also get back water. And look at this. Do you see this? What is this? All, all, 100%, all of it. Any other part is doing anything for this? No, you already got it. 100%, 100% of the nutrients in the proximal. Plus, you reabsorb sodium and you get rid of potassium and hydrogen. Then you go to the descending limb and ascending limb. This is easy. Water only, just water. You take back water. It's nothing much. Okay? How do you take water out? Well, there is a technique here. It's not as simple. I told you urinary system is not easy. Okay, so how do you do it? There is a technique here. Like the water just move out? No, this is not something logic. How the water goes out? How do you take it back in this part? You do something called counter current system. What's a counter current system? Do you remember osmosis? It moves from less concentration to more concentration, isn't it? So if I wanted to move water from inside this to outside, goes out, go back to the blood. How can I do that? You just push it? No, there is nothing called push it, right? So what to do here? I'm going to take out out, salt out, salt out in this side. So now surrounding this is more concentrated. Are we following? So this will take the water out, which is this. Can we see this? So those two are basic. This is called counter current effect. Basically, you are going to build around the loop salt, sodium chloride, sodium chloride, sodium chloride, until you end up having this area surrounding the tubules or surrounding the loop specifically more concentrated. Ultimately, water, osmosis, you take it back. Did you get this idea? I'm making it as simple as possible, but this is just the basics. Okay, this is how it goes. Counter current effect. How do you do it? I create higher concentration around the loop. How? By putting salt outside. What's the salt? Sodium. Sodium what? Chloride. So I'm going to take sodium and chloride surrounding this loop, creating a higher osmotic pressure surrounding it. So that will end up getting the water back. Distal convoluted tubule, also ions, plus acids and toxins, and water. Ions, most importantly, sodium and calcium. Okay? So listen to this, just to make it a little bit, it's not easy. It's just a little bit easier. Where do we reabsorb the water? Everywhere. How about this? Everywhere. Proximal and loop and distal and everything. Everywhere. Just put this to the side and move to the details. Okay? So distal, water. It goes without saying. Plus, plus. So plus what? Sodium and calcium under hormonal control. And this word is extremely, extremely important. Under hormonal control. So if I ask you, the hormones that work on the kidney, remember aldosterone and ADH? Do you remember this? Do you remember parathyroid hormone? Remember this? Aldosterone, what does it do? Reabsorption of, not water. Sodium. Yeah, it will be followed by water, but what's the one thing? Sodium. And ADH, you reabsorb water. And parathyroid hormone, you reabsorb calcium. Okay, all of this is happening in the kidney. Yes, which part of the kidney? Distal convoluted tubule. So this part is the part that responds to the hormones. Very important. Remember this. Okay? And you know that I'm going to ask you about the important parts. You already know. So where does the hormones work? On the nephron. Yes, which part of the nephron? Distal convoluted tubule specifically. Aldosterone, ADH, parathyroid hormone. All of these, all the hormones, they work on this part. And then collecting duct. What do you think will reabsorb here? What goes without saying? Water. Water is everywhere. This is not memorization. I'm telling you, water is everywhere. You don't have to remember it. It's everywhere. Plus other things. What are the other things? Hydrogen, sodium, potassium, bicarb. What? Are you reabsorbing hydrogen or are you reabsorbing bicarb? Right? Are you reabsorbing sodium or are you, these are opposite things, right? You can't take both of them. Yes, this is your final chance to do anything. So because this is the final chance, we call it variable amount because it all depends. Like I'm your backup, I'm your collecting duct, I'm the last one. Show me what you got here. You did your part. I understand that. It's not perfect. At the end, show me what you have. I still have a lot of hydrogen. I will take it. And I'm not, I mean, I will get rid of it if you have a lot of hydrogen. And I'm going to keep bicarb. What if you still have a lot of bicarb? I'm going to do the opposite. So what do you do? It's not determined. It all depends on what did you get at the end. Like all of these are doing their work. And at the end, collecting duct, we call it variable reabsorption of sodium and potassium and water and hydrogen and bicarb, which is what we did in the previous parts. It all depends on what you got. This is my final step, so I don't have something specific. You can say like sodium reabsorption, like this. This is sodium reabsorption. Is this a sodium reabsorption? No. It all depends. So variable amounts of all of these. At the end, the last part of the collecting duct is called the papillary duct. And this papillary duct, why did you call it papillary duct? The last part of the collecting duct. Why did we call it this name? Papillary duct. Because it is in the papilla. What's papilla? Tip, tip of the pyramids. That's why we call it the papilla. So what do you think this is? The yellow. Urine. And what was this? So the filtrate go to the tubules and the urine leave the tubules, going to minor calyx. Okay, and we will stop here.